Hello everyone, this is a quick review of the first contest day for the 18-meter nationals held in Minden, Nevada. This flight took place on June 10th, 2014. Won by Doug Jacobs, over 100 miles per hour. Second was Bill Gawthorpe in a JS1B with a jet in it, 100.21 miles per hour and 350 miles. John Cochran, Steve Nichols, Sean Fiddler, third, fourth, and fifth respectively, roughly 98 miles per hour. And then 6th through 10th, Ray Gimme, Rick Andrebo, Rick Walters, who ended up second for the contest, Gary Ittner, U.S. World Team member going to Poland in a few weeks, and Sam Zimmerman in an ASH 31. This was an extraordinary day, really fast, really powerful, and really fun. Weather, I'm going to plagiarize Dave Nadler's blog. His memory is better than mine because he was smart enough to write it down. Dan Gudgel, the weatherman for the Uvalde World Championship, just really brilliant guy, and always learned a ton from his weather briefings. On this day, he talked about a product called the low-level convergence, high-level divergence, which gave him an idea of forecast thunderstorm locations. And this day it showed pretty clearly that there'd be overdevelopment and thunderstorms in the southern turn area, Mono Lake, and then I believe further east towards Fallon between 1 and 2 o'clock. Cloud bases were going to be relatively high, 15 to 16K, 4 to 6 knots around launch and start time, and 7 to 9 knots at 5 p.m. Also a westerly flow of sea breeze out of the Sierra, out of Lake Tahoe into the desert that could wash out the Carson Valley and the Pine Nuts later in the afternoon. So that was something to look out for. The task was a 3-hour, 30-minute assigned area task with the start, Armstrong to the south, Hawthorne to the east, Dayton up just north of the Pine Nuts, Tiger a little further northeast from that, and then back down to the south, almost to Mono Lake, where that thunderstorm activity was going to be. I was a little concerned about that, seeing this is my first real task day in the mountains, and then back to the finish. So what does that look like? You can see it here depicted in the 3D and see it here in the 2D, and I recommend tuning up your YouTube to the highest resolution 1080p so you can see this. I'll do it on the 2D. You can see here the start cylinder, just southeast of Minden, and then the first turn is down here called Armstrong, 10-mile radius just north of Mono Lake, and if you went deep you could get south of Mono Lake. Then back over here to Hawthorne, which includes Mount Grant and this mountain range here. Mount Grant is 14,000 feet or so. And then I missed this. This is Mount Patterson, which is a typical springboard for finding climbs on the way to the south, and we use that today. So once out of Hawthorne, it's either stay on the high ground, as we were briefed by some of the local experts before the task today, and then come up the Pine Nuts to Dayton, or if you want to risk it, go direct. And then once to Dayton, this was totally blue today, basically, but get up into Tiger. And I just nipped into Tiger, and unfortunately, that was sort of what cost me the day here. You could see what that looks like there. Then back to Sweetwater, which had this huge 20-mile radius of 40 miles from edge to edge. And it was so strong here, I actually took my last turn around here, climbed a couple thousand feet, hit the back right at 17,000 feet, and ended up 5,000 feet high at the finish. But it was enormously strong. There was virga here and some heavier precipitation here that I had a little choice but to go through a little bit, and then I actually duck out and tried to get out into the blue here to find sink on the way home to get down. It was that strong of a day. Really, really, really fun flying day. So let me pause here for a second. Okay, so let me zoom in here a little bit and I will start the replay. You can see Dennis Linekin, who was probably sniffing, has already climbed up and is working up and down the Pine Nuts. trying to find the best location for a climb. And if you look here, the start cylinder is here with a 10,000 foot max. Your departure procedure is essentially to jump onto Mount Siegel here or somewhere on the Pine Nuts and find a climb high enough to get to Mount Patterson High to find another climb there. And that's the fastest way to get out of the area. And the more time you can spend back here kind of understanding where the first climb is going to be, the better your exit speed was going to be out of the start. If you somehow started lower out the side of the start cylinder, you were forced to jump right onto these ridges, and you may not find the best climb or the best climb as efficiently as some of the others. So you got dropped off here on toe, climbed up a little bit, stepped back, climbed up a little bit, and tried to sort of stay 2,000 feet above the ground here and within gliding range back to Minden. It was a little bit scary some of the days when you're full of water and the lift is weak and starting to build in the morning. Definitely was a challenge getting up for me a couple of the days, and was exciting, though. I think I'm better for it for learning how to do it. So here in the pre-start, and I'll zoom in a little bit on the 2D so you can see what's going on. Basically the good pilots are running up and down and trying to find where the best climbs are. And today it's not necessarily blue. I think the first clouds are just south of the Pine Nuts here. So with a good start, a good climb out of the top of the cylinder, you could probably make it to those first clouds. But really the prime spot to find a climb is right here off Mount Siegel. And I think I actually marked this thermal, or marked the lift here on the back edge, and you could see how far downwind of the peak that this climb is. It's 6 knots here, and I take it up for 3,500 feet or so. So on this day, Dan, the weather guy, and some of the other locals talked about how strong the sea breeze could be late in the day, washing out this valley and washing out lift on the Pine Nuts. So I definitely wanted to start as soon as I could. I think here it's approaching 2 o'clock, and they're getting ready to open the start gate. So as soon as I heard that, I came right back here to the start. I had a pretty good idea of the first thermal, and there were certainly a lot of clouds to the south. My hope was to start early, but also start behind some very good pilots and have some markers that I could work with. So you can see here I'm descending down. It was as high as 16,000 feet before the start. I'm just about to cross below the 10,000 foot mark and start my watch for the 2-minute countdown. And there's a huge gaggle, so I jump right into that. And we'll watch here for the average vario to pick up. And I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. So here I'm still at 9,800 feet, waiting for that climb. And there it is, 6.2 knots for 1,500 feet with a nice gaggle, and it's really a good start position, except I'm probably the first one out of the group here. So good. I got up to about 11,500 feet. That's plenty of altitude to get back where I wanted to go, behind Mount Siegel for the first climb. And I also have a really good group of glider pilots up here ahead. I certainly didn't know who they were, but you've got Rick Walters, Dennis Linekin, Kilo Tango, and of course this group here that's with me. So here we are in the 2D view. And I think I basically just came back to about where I thought the first climb was marked. And let's see. Yep, there it is. Almost 8 knots for 3,500 feet, and that'll be up to maybe 15,000 feet and plenty of altitude to get down to Mount Siegel. You can see Doug Jacobs started 5 minutes behind or so, Ray Gimme, and this will be a really good exit out of the start area. So yeah, 15,000 feet or so, and off we go. So here's Whiskey 3, Tango Alpha, Frank Painter, Yo, Dave Nadler, 5 Echo, Eric Nelson, Tim Wells is Whiskey 3, and then up here we've got 4-3, Martin Grant, Kilo Tango, Dennis Linekin, and Rick Walters. So really good company to start with. I'm happy, I'm nice and high, didn't get stuck, and we're running under clouds here, and you can see a negative 1,000 LD at 127 miles an hour ground speed, so it's working. We're going really fast. I'm still almost 15,000 feet high here as I come down into the Patterson area. So I'm probably really happy with this start, and really happy to have a nice group in front of me to show me the way. And as you'll see here shortly, I kind of screw that up and get to a point where I don't have any help. So the first group, Dennis, Martin Grant, Rick Walters, Kilo Tango, and Tango Alpha, jump into a climb here, 5 knots or so, and what do? I fly right through it. Wasn't enough for me, and Kilo Tango comes up here. There must have been a better looking cloud ahead or something, and jump up in, here we go. So I hit 11 knots. So it was good to pass up the 5-knot thermal for 11 knots, and oddly enough, the lead group blows right through 11 knots, and it was that strong of a day today. Although I think passing through 11 knots was a little bit of a mistake, but look at that. 1 full turn, 2 full turns, and that was 1,300 feet. Or almost 1,300 feet. That is amazing. So welcome to Minden, everyone. So here we go. We're up high, 16.5, under clouds, and running off. You can see here the first turn area around Armstrong, just absolutely blasting now. So Whiskey 3, Tim Wells, 4-3, Martin Grant, 7 Tango, Sean Fiddler, 4 Bravo, Rick Walters, and DL, Dennis Linekin. And you can see us here on the 2D. There must be a street here because we're all following almost the exact line. So here's another climb. Average 10.1 knots for 2,100 feet. 4 Bravo averages 7.9, and Dennis Linekin 7.4 for roughly 2,200 feet for each of us. So I'm getting a little bit better of the climb rates out of the group here. And off I go. Almost 17,000 feet. Down to 16.6, 16.5. And, oh, so all that gain is erased by a miss. Everybody catches up. I'm a little bit above. You can see here the back of the turn. But I'm in a really good spot here. 4 Bravo right there beneath me. He's at 15.6. I'm at 16.2, so I'm 600-700 feet above. Dennis Linekin, Tim Wells, and Martin Grant. And here we are hitting the back of the turn. And still at 16,700 feet. So that was just an absolutely scorching first leg. I took a 7.7 knot climb out of the start, and then hit 2 10-knot climbs right to the back of the first turn. Can't do much better than that. And looking back, Kilo Tango, 5 Echo, here's Papa 7 and Yankee Charlie, Rick and Drebo, So I've had a really, really good first leg. Here's Tango Alpha. It doesn't get much better than that. You can see the Sierra here and Mono Lake. So off we go, headed to the north, and I think there's still cloud here, but I think there was a really strong street here that we ran down. So it might have been better to run right back up that energy, but it's a 4 Bravo stopping there for 6.3 knots and 1,500 feet. I keep going. And you'll notice I'm sort of on my own now. all alone, and this is my first contest day in the mountains. So I'll be honest, I was a little nervous right now. I'm doing great, but I think the thinking was, what mistake am I going to make here to screw this up? So I'm still going well. I'm going 140 miles per hour of ground speed, down to 15,000. And Rick and Tim Wells are catching in their altitude a little bit and catching up. I'm at the same altitude as Rick right here. So, give you a look at what we're looking at here. The turn area is Hawthorne, which is behind Mount Grant. The wind is out of the west-southwest here at still light, maybe 6 miles per hour. But this is generally known to be a sinkhole, and what we're running into here are the last few of the clouds, and to the north it is generally blue. So my thinking is, I don't want to go too deep into Hawthorne because I don't want to get caught low and not find a thermal over Mount Grant, or get stuck trying to find a thermal over Mount Grant. I'm thinking if I can't find a climb here, I want to save as much of my altitude as I can to get back over here to the Pine Nuts and head north. I pull into a climb, and another 10.2 knot climb for 2,400 feet. Not bad. So 5 turns or so, back up to 17,000. Absolutely extraordinarily powerful day. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, except for the day before, the first practice day, which was enormously strong as well. But Minden is just an amazing place to fly. So here it looks like I'm running over to the lure, to the high ground, thinking that the thermals are going to kick off at the same slant angle as they did on the Pine Nuts, and they don't. I don't find much in here, and I turn around relatively quickly. Rick Walters 4 Bravo takes a little bit more distance, and Dennis Lincoln cuts it a little shorter than I did. So here comes Doug, here comes Ray Gimme, Dave Nadler, Rick Andrebo, Tango Alpha. So looking ahead, there's not a lot of clouds up here, but there are big clouds down here. And the question is, do I deviate left to get high in the clouds, or do I try and run the little wisps and leftover stuff, or that's not really well developed and you can't see it very well? And generally, are there thermals out here in this blue area, and are the thermal values the same as what you get here? And I decide to sort of cut the distance. I'm maybe 30 degrees off course, and I want to get here to the back of the Pine Nuts. And you'll see Dennis Linnekin takes a little bit more of a road to the left, and most of the guys kind of take the same path. And the locals, the really strong pilots, had briefed in the morning that might be the best way to go. And I think later in the day, some Q actually develop out here that some people run and save a little bit of distance. But that's what's going through the minds of some of the pilots right now. So let's see here. Now 4 Bravo went maybe another 2 miles or so in there, but he also has the added penalty of being a little lower. So 4 Bravo's down at 12.5 and I'm almost at 14. So 1,500 feet for 4 miles. It's probably a little bit high of a trade-off, but we'll see how it plays out. And where's Dennis? Dennis is at 14.6. So I think Dennis took a little bit of a climb back here. So again, there's clouds down here to the south. It's relatively blue to the north. And will we find anything in the blue? And there might have been a couple wispy clouds here. So I'm doing a good job of going to the high ground and find 7.1 knots and only take 1 turn. Must have seen something better ahead. And a little better, 8.2 knots, and I take that up for 2,400 feet. So Rick got an extra 4 miles here, but he's essentially lost 4,000 feet now. So I'm not sure if that paid off. We'll have to see how it goes. And Dennis, a little bit less distance, but he's still a little bit lower. So I've had a very good run here. Let's see here. DJ and 4-3, Martin Grant, just nipped into to the turn, and well, they got about 25% in or so, and are coming right to the high ground with us. So it looks like Doug has gone a little bit less distance, but he's been fairly efficient so far. When Rick's struggling to find the climb down here, Dennis takes off early, and I get up to 15,000 feet or so. So you can see here, Dennis is going to some clouds and some high ground that's over here, if I remember correctly, and I'm kind of still staying in the very weak, wispy Q haze dome kind of stuff. I don't want to give away that much distance, and we'll have to see if it pays off. I mean, obviously, Dennis finds a climb here, 7.3 knots for 4,000 feet. So initially, I would say that's a great move because there isn't anything guaranteed over here, and he only gave up a few miles to do that. And Rick is doing the same thing that Dennis Linnekin did, while to the left with Martin Grant, and Doug is taking my line here and sort of cutting the corner. What do I find? 5.6 knots. So Dennis got 7.7. I went a little bit more direct route and got 5.6 knots. Dennis looks quite high though, 15,000 feet. So I think Dennis and I basically came out about even in that exchange. And DJ's cut out a lot of distance on the rest of the guys by going the direct route. He's at 13,000, so 1,500 feet below me. So I'm back on the pine nuts, but I'm alone, and there's not a lot of Q to work with up here. There are random cumulus clouds, and some look halfway decent, but it's not the greatest. Here's another 6.5 knot climb for 1,700 feet, and it looks like DJ and Dennis Linnekin jump in and get 5 knots and 4 knots respectively for a little bit less altitude. So I'll have gained on that a little bit. You can see the pack back here coming out of the pine nuts. Everybody pretty much had the same idea. So let's see, I'm at 15,000, DJ's at 2,500. So here, I'm definitely looking for a final climb here off the pine nuts before I go out into Tiger. So, and I take 4 knots for 680. I'm probably not going to be happy with that, but want to get something there before going out here into the valley and kind of disorganized terrain over here. Certainly not as strong as a good line like the pine nuts. So I just cut right through Dayton, and I think what I'm thinking of is there's a few clouds or a little line of clouds that go this way into the turn point, barely into the Tiger turn point. I think that's what I'm going after. I'm coming down a little bit. I'm down to 12,500. Definitely going to be looking for a climb here. Okay, and there I find 6.3 knots for 3,000 feet. That'll get me up to 15 or so. And what did Dennis and DJ find? Yeah, they find an even better climb, so a little bit better. 6.8 and 6.9 knots. So that'll get them back into the game pretty good. Alright, so off we go into Tiger here. And what I was thinking is it's completely blue out here. There's, I'm coming to the end of a little street of clouds, or street of wisps basically. And I'm thinking, wow, the clouds look really strong. There's convection down here. There's power in the air down here. I want to get out of here high enough, run down the pine nuts, and maximize that cylinder rather than worrying about getting into this cylinder into the blue. And that turns out to be a mistake. I end up 4 minutes early, and Dennis and Doug Jacobs fly to this mountain, find I believe it's a 7-knot climb, and then run back and almost maximize the next turn. So I have to almost go through Virga and everything to get to the bottom of the, was it Sweetwater turn down here. And I just should have recognized that in a day with 7, 8, 9 knot thermals, I'm going to need some more track. And I didn't do that. So you'll see that play out here. So taking another 5-knot thermal for 600 feet. My mind is telling me that it's getting weaker ahead, and there you can see I turn very early. So also coming into the turn, there's 4 Bravo, Rick Walters, Martin Grant. Ray Gimme has caught up quite a bit. He's kind of 5th place, 6th place now. Looks like he's quite high. And Whiskey 3. So you can see here DJ and Dennis maximizing the Tiger turn point pretty good. And you zoom out a little bit so you can see. And when they hit a thermal, they find 7 knots and 5 knots respectively for 3,000 feet for Doug. So anyway, you can see me coming back down on the pine nuts. I'm accounting for some thermal drift, and then I slowly lose confidence in that because I look at my flight computer and I see that it's blowing 20 miles per hour out of the west now. So the sea breeze is happening, and for some reason, I'm just nervous of being on the downwind side of a mountain range, and I instead sort of commit to this point right here where I finally find a decent thermal to get me back up. And there are some really strong clouds right here about the track where everybody came through and got over on the pine nuts. But I don't want to go direct there because I don't want to fail to connect and be low in this valley trapped behind the pine nuts. So I'm not sure if that was a mistake or the right thing to do here, but at this point, it's essentially my first day racing in Minden. I'm more comfortable on the windward side, and I think I would have found better climbs out here with even more of a slant angle than before because the wind is stronger. But I'm assuming that maybe this is starting to blow everything out here, and I'm worried about how do I find a climb to connect with the clouds down here to the south without getting stuck. So as you can see here, I've done really well. Even though I just tipped into Tiger, I'm pretty far down the track, and I'm totally by myself and looking for the next climb. You can see how low I am over the terrain there. AGL of 1,200 feet, and I'm down to 10,500. Again, just barely over the pine nuts here. But sure enough, I find a relatively predictable climb, 6 knots for 2,500 feet, 4 minutes of climbing. And that's going to be enough to get me down to the clouds that I see down here, and that'll be pretty much it for the climb. One thing I did notice here is you can see a lot of the guys, the really good pilots, they come right down the center of the valley, and a lot of them were telling me not to do that because that valley was irrigated and could be a source of a lot of sink. I can see the tracks that they're coming down through here. Anyway, just worth noting. So here I am. There's some clouds here and a little street that runs down into the Sierras. So I'm trying to connect into that. And I'm early here, and I know that I absolutely need to maximize this turn. So I'm definitely going to the back of it. So there we go. Found the cloud, 7 knots for 2,600 feet. So I've got to be really happy at this point because I know I'm going to be able to get into these very solid clouds and go fast now. One risk though is there's virga and there's precipitation coming out of a couple of these things, but I'm not super concerned about that at this point. So I'm at 15.2, going 130 miles per hour, and that was my final turn. It's a 59 LD to the finish, and that's 5,000 feet high at the finish. 5,700 is the finish altitude, and I think I finish above 10,000. But right now I'm just absolutely storming. 140 miles per hour, climbing, and the convection and cumulus clouds down here are just streeting and absolutely enormous. So you can watch here and see the climb as I start to get under the best clouds and approach the virga. So there I've climbed up 700, 800, still going 130 miles an hour, almost up to 16,000. And now it's the really strong part. I'm probably going through the virga right now. 16,000, so I've gained 1,000 feet since the last thermal and haven't turned. And so 16.3, 16.4, 16.5, 1,500 feet since the last turn. I'm slowing down a little bit to climb, but pretty soon here as I'm approaching 17,000 or 2,000 feet above the exit of the last thermal, I'm going 145 here trying to get out. So you can see I'm almost to the bottom of the turn. I've done a good job of maximizing it, and I turn around and I realize that I'm probably going to be a little bit early, and I'm actually turning left here and trying to get out of the lift to get out of the sink, and you can see my speed was almost 160 miles an hour there. I'm really pushing. I'm worried about overspeeding, and I'm trying to stay out from under the 17.5. So that was a little bit exciting, and once I get good and out into the blue and out into the sink, it's just a straight final glide home. I'll have plenty of altitude, no worries about the sea breeze washing out the thermals in the valley. Let's take a look at the rest of the crowd. You can see Gary Ittner Doug Jacobs. 4 Bravo goes right to the back of the first turn. You can see him here on the 2D. And X-Ray Charlie, Rick and Drebo. So those are some of the stars of the contest, that's for sure. Here's Dennis. A little low there. What's his AGL? Yeah, he's 3,000 feet above the ground there. So this is just a straight and clean final glide. You can see the finish cylinder right there. It's a 5,700 foot minimum altitude, and here I am at 12.7 going 150 miles per hour. I know I have absolutely no chance of getting down, but I'm going to be 4 minutes early, so it doesn't matter. I might as well save the altitude and be safe and have plenty of time to enter the pattern here on the way back. So in hindsight, by being 4 minutes early and not going far enough into the Tiger turn point, I think that's what cost me a little bit today, but it wasn't bad. I was only 30 points behind the winner or so, and this was a great first day, and I think everybody wanted to be conservative. There were some things to think about with all the blue to the north and the convection down to the south, but overall it was an awesome day of flying. I was blown away by Minden here. So let's see, right about the finish, I get down to 88, so only 3,000 feet high, but you can kind of get an idea of the strength of this place. Dennis finishing with me right there. Here comes 5 Echo and Martin Grant, and Tim Wells, Doug Jacobs, Rick, Gary Ittner, and the gang coming back in. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me just jump back to the scores. So I didn't do too bad. I was 97% of the leader score. I could have gone a little deeper into Tiger, but I would have had to go way into the back to get that climb, the high ground on the other side, and I might not have been able to reach the really strong air on the south side of the Sweetwater turn point. So I'm not sure if that would have necessarily worked out, but overall I think I flew good. I was happy that I flew by myself essentially and did a good job and had a good average speed, and it was really good to fly with Rick Walters and Dennis Linekin. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review, and my feelings going into this day were a lot of nervousness, and my feelings coming out of it was it's not that bad. It's a really, really fun place to fly. All right. Thank you very much.